Welcome to the Centripetal Cyber Threat Brief. I'm Cody Baker, Senior Cyber Threat Analyst at Centripetal. On this episode, I'm excited to have Bob Gourley, co-founder and CTO of OODA Loop, join us to speak on the current global threat landscape, demonstrating both the risks and opportunities for businesses, in addition to the strategic actions they can take to mitigate risks through automation, decision-making, and more.
Thank you, Cody. Hello, I'm Bob Gourley, the Chief Technology Officer of OODA LLC. This discussion dives deep into the geopolitical realities many of us are facing and leads to actionable recommendations for decision makers. Who's this discussion for? We're aiming to get information to two basic kinds of users: network defenders. For the last decade, we have all realized that cybersecurity professionals need to track geopolitical events. Never has this been more true as today. Right now, there are geopolitical events that are impacting the threats that are hitting your networks. Understanding these threats can help you better position to defend. C-suite leaders also need to track geopolitical risk and opportunities so they can provide the right resources to raising defense and to staying agile to capture opportunities. This slide shows an overview of key geopolitical strategic issues. It's broken into two parts: regions and then issues that affect all of us. At the bottom, we list several of these issues that affect all of us, including the fact that the entire world is now dealing with COVID. We are really living in the age of COVID, and the way it looks, we're going to be living with this for a long time. Other issues we're all facing include extreme weather and all of us trying to deal with climate change. There's also an emerging issue hitting almost every continent of corruption and extremism working with criminal elements. And this is a rising threat that we have to track everywhere. We're all also dealing with cyber risk, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But regionally, there are different issues for business. We list several here. For example, in North America, there are issues of polarization and radicalization and rising crime and a weakening economy that we all have to watch. In Latin America, there are continued issues of crime and a growing narcotics criminal activity that is global in scale and now has connections into cyber threats. In Africa, there's continued issues with civil war and growing terrorist threats that have not subsided. And there's also resource wars underway in Africa that are growing in seriousness with the decline of water and other precious resources. In the Middle East, there is still turmoil. ISIS was beaten back significantly, but still exists as a terror player. Many in ISIS are technologically savvy and have moved out of the Middle East area into both Europe and Latin America. Many of these, who understand violence very well and technology, are starting to attack people for profit. In Europe, there are a lot of issues which are pulling and straining at the coalition, but there's also a lot that have brought the coalition together, including the invasion of Ukraine, which we'll talk about more in just a second. But one definite trend in Europe is the strengthening of NATO because of the activities of Russia. There's also, however, other trends we have to watch, including a weakening economy. And this economy is the second greatest in the world. So it's extremely important to watch and will have an impact on all of our businesses. Further into Asia, there's continued issues with the Pakistan and India border, with the India and China border. There's also issues of drought and extreme heat in India and resource issues throughout the continent. In China, we have all been watching for the last 3 years a weakening of their economy and now extreme shutdown measures due to COVID, which are disrupting supply chains. Russia has been a concern for a long time, but now Russia is seeing a decline of its own economy, something that we think may have been the tipping point that pushed Putin to invade Ukraine. All of these issues are serious and they're all connected and they're all giving rise to issues that affect us in the enterprise as we think enterprise defense. A few of these issues are listed here that we'll talk about in a little more detail. The Russian invasion of Ukraine did several things. One, it woke many up to the threat of Russia and China. And this is a horrible way to do it, but it did wake up many people, and it's built a stronger NATO, and has also built a deeper understanding of the benefits of the free enterprise capitalist system. And we think eventually it's going to help make a stronger, open, democratic world. But unfortunately, it's been so brutal on Ukraine. When this war is over, we don't know. Our belief is that once a war starts, it's impossible to predict the end. Therefore, we need to plan for multiple scenarios. Plan for an early ending of the war, but also plan for an extended war. And think through what these scenarios mean for your business. There are cyber war components of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Many in the media mistakenly thought that Russia is not attacking. I think they jumped too soon because there was not adequate instrumentation that journalists saw. Those who have their networks instrumented are seeing more attacks coming from Ukraine. There has also been attacks on U.S. communications providers coming from Russia because of the war in Ukraine, Viasat, for example. And the attacks in Ukraine from Russia have been significant. So there is cyber conflict from Russia because of their invasion in the Ukraine. Great power competition has been on the rise for over a decade. The Russian invasion of Ukraine has just made that even more important to understand. China and Russia are not just competitors with the U.S., but they're adversaries, and we need to understand that. Both China and Russia will use cyber attacks to benefit their own economy. They will steal intellectual property. They will do other things to make financial benefit for themselves. We'll get back to some of that in just a second. Another thing that the invasion of Ukraine has done is really help defenders understand the tighter connection between cyber security and geopolitical risk. Now, there has always been a connection, but never so tight. The actions in the geopolitical world are now just directly tied to the things that you will see on your networks. Understanding this can help you build stronger defenses, and we'll get to what I mean by this on our recommendations slide. Another thing that we've been tracking for 4 solid years is the growing weakness in China. China is quick to manipulate data to make it look like they are strong and that they are inevitable as the world's single most powerful economic powerhouse. It turns out there's a lot of weakness in China, and COVID has exposed that. And this is dangerous, and it's something we really need to understand and track, because with the declining economy in China, there's more motivation for both the government and independent actors to attack networks. We need to raise our defenses and keep China from stealing intellectual property and from posing other financial risks to us. I want to call out and mention a trend that's not related to these geopolitical conflicts, and that is the rise of extremism, the rise of crime, and the convergence of extremism and crime with corruption in many parts of the world. We, in the parts of the world that respect the law, need to understand that we need to defend our networks from very sophisticated criminals that can include nations under the influence of criminals. All of the above points to one of the most important threat dynamics underway today, and that's ransomware. We have been tracking ransomware for over a decade. Think of 10 years ago what ransomware looked like. It was serious, but you could mitigate it by running antivirus software or some firewall. Not anymore. Ransomware has evolved to the point where it really takes a comprehensive defense to defeat. You really need automation to detect ransomware. You need automation to do your backups. You need automation to test your backups. And you need automation to mitigate anything that looks like it could be a way that ransomware could give you a foothold. Another key issue that we are examining through all of this is the convergence of technologies. And the convergence of technologies stems from the cyber, from artificial intelligence, but also the physical and the robotics. This convergence is delivering awesome capabilities that are really going to help improve our economy. I'm just convinced of that. But it also opens up a lot of new cyber threats. So, what do you do about this? We have 3 key recommendations. Since it's impossible to know the future, you can look at these geopolitical events and think, what can I do to plan for what I can't tell is coming? Well, you do that through scenario planning. Scenario planning is really the only way to optimize your decision making in a world like this. Scenario planning is not an attempt to predict the future. It is to come up with several realistic alternatives to the future and then use that to inform your planning. For example, when will the war in Ukraine end? We don't know, so let's make 4 different scenarios. And then, depending on what those scenarios tell us, inform your business strategy based on that. When will the world go into an economic recession, or will it? We don't know, so let's plan and see what it looks like if there is a recession or if there's not a recession, for example. So this scenario planning is also critical for your networks. You need to design your business networks with multiple scenarios in mind. Design them for agility and design them for automation. That is key. The second major recommendation is mitigating cyber risk. And here too, automation is critical. The way to mitigate cyber risk in this environment is to build in automation. No organization can afford all of the manpower it would take to defend your network. You have to automate. Technology is coming. It's coming fast. You need to build for agility, and this also requires automation. Automation, as I previously mentioned, is key to mitigating ransomware. You have to act fast. At the speed of light, you really have to act at machine speed to mitigate the threat of ransomware. For every business, no matter where you are, it's critically important to understand and protect your supply chains and your partners' supply chains. You need visibility into these because you never know what's going to happen to your supply chain unless you have visibility into it. That helps reduce risk, and that can really help as you plan for agility and optimize your defenses also. Here too, in knowing your supply chain to a new degree, automation is key. You don't do this by emailing out spreadsheets and asking people to respond to polls. You need an automated way to understand your supply chain. These 3 actions, the scenario planning for optimizing your decisions, the mitigating cyber risk through continuous automation, and the deeper understanding of your supply chain, I think are key, and we're driven to these recommendations by our awareness of the geopolitical risk environment. If you would like more information on any of these topics, please join us at oodaloop.com, where we have built a community of decision makers who use this information to inform their actions. Thank you, Centripetal. I really appreciate the way you guys are helping enterprises automate for security.
Thank you, Bob. If you have any more questions, visit us at Centripetal AI. Thank you for joining. We'll see you next time.